Welcome to today's talk time. I'm Meredith McCarthy, and I'm going to be having Teresa Saunders, a fellow colleague of mine, and we're talking about the idea of journaling. Not any kind of journaling, though. This is a specific type of journaling that has incredible results. So we're going to get right into that. I hope you enjoy this one. Buckle up. Hello, Teresa. Welcome back. It's been a little while.
It has. Thank you, Meredith, for welcoming me back onto your show.
Now, we're going to be talking about something that you put me onto, actually. So when I was on the drive, I was eagerly listening to this podcast from Andrew Huberman. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that so we can get right into it?
Well, we've been having a discussion, both of us, hadn't we, about journaling and the way that people actually journal and the different types of journaling. And I discovered then that there was actually a form of journaling that I hadn't heard of before that was, and I've got my notes here so that I get it right, that was discovered by Dr James Pennebaker. And it's a form of expressive writing. He's a psychologist, and it's writing for 15 to 20 minutes. And you do 4 different stages, and it doesn't matter when they did their study, it doesn't matter whether it's like 4 days in a row or 4 times in a month, whether it's the same day or not, but you write for 15 to 20 minutes. And you don't think about what you're writing, you just non-stop write. You don't worry about whether it's actually, your grammar and that type of thing. You just literally write for those 15 to 20 minutes about a negative time in your life.
Yeah, so getting to that, they did some really amazing studies, and there have been a number of peer group studies that have proven this to be extremely helpful for people who have gone through trauma and want to process things. So half the study, they got people just to write about not very important things, and then the other study, people in the study were to write about something that really deeply affected them in a not so great way. So I thought that was really interesting, that there have been a number of studies that have proven this to be very, very effective for people to process information. And that's not necessarily about them telling anyone like a counsellor what they wrote in the journal, right?
No, it was literally, you do this right and you keep it to yourself. It's not for anybody else. And when you've completed the 4 exercises, you then can go back and you actually look at your words that you've used and the amount of negative words that you used in the first one, and you circle them for all 4 parts. And then again, you go back and you look at the way that the language patterns have actually changed, and they changed dramatically and became more positive by the end of the 4th journaling session, which I found really fascinating. And the fact that it doesn't matter the time span, and it can last for months, weeks, months, years, the effects that it actually have on positive change on you.
Now, to the listeners out there, there was a curious part of the study. You could either do it in 4 days, very, very quickly, or over a period of 4 weeks. So it didn't make any significant difference whether it was all jammed up together, so you get it right done and dusted, or you take time to do it. But as long as that, you sit down and take that time to continuously write, your brain has a chance then to process. And that I thought was quite interesting, that part of the study.
The fact the time thing. I mean, I would be cautious for people to sit down and do it without any form of support around them, especially if they're working on something quite traumatic, or because it could bring up a lot of emotions and that. And one of the things of the study it said is don't do it just before you're going to go to bed and those sort of things, because the emotions it can bring up by actually doing that journaling.
Absolutely. There was another part of the conversation that pricked up my ears, and that was about how it affected the immune system.
That's getting bigger and bigger, isn't it? Like how our thoughts and holding on to trauma and negative patterns, I guess, in our lives does affect us physically and our well-being.
Yeah, so many people in that study who had autoimmune issues showed significant change, and sometimes even resolving fully, which was really interesting to me.
Yeah, I hadn't heard it for a while. If you look back and you look at people like Louise Hay and all that lot, it goes back to that, very similar basis, I guess, but it was interesting with this study, especially as we hadn't heard of it. Neither of us had heard of this form of journaling before. Absolutely. Of what results it has.
No, I was quite excited about it because I thought, well, the typical journaling is about sort of dumping any old thing, what's going on for you right now, but you don't necessarily go and rewrite about it again and again and again and again, which is quite the difference. So you're sort of being asked to focus on something significant that was emotional for you. And you don't always have to do this exercise with the most traumatic experience first. Maybe warm up into it, just sort of see how it goes for you. And then you are to write about the same thing over and over again, but your brain will slowly develop a different way of kind of maybe journeying that memory. And what I found Andrew Huberman was talking about was how it affected the frontal cortex and how we're processing information, and also about the blood tests that they did after it, to see how it was affecting the way people were going through healing in their body. I can't remember the specifics, but I found that particularly interesting.
Yes, it's really, really, I think, fantastic that we're having science now backing up a lot of these modalities that we've used in the past, and people have sort of said they're woo-woo type of thing, but having science show that evidence of the positive effects that it does actually have on us as human beings, I think is just great to be getting out there to the public.
There were some key questions that I guess you are meant to be focusing on for the particular exercise. Can you remember what those were?
It was like how you felt at that time and how that event made you feel now, and what changed, what you think during that period of time from when the event happened until this time it had affected you. So you're writing down facts, but also how it actually affected you as well.
What I found curious with one of the questions is what it might be connected to. So to write down how you think it might connect to something else. And I thought that was curious. But the study also showed that wasn't any significant difference between 15 minutes of consistent journaling to 30 minutes. So some people take 30 minutes to actually write down all of their thoughts, and some people might be quite quick and take 15 minutes, right? Or it might be quite a big event, so it might take more than 15 minutes, but there was no significant clinical sort of thing saying that 15 minutes was better than 30 minutes or vice versa.
No, and it was also the other thing I found really fascinating was there were studies done as well and change of the difference in journaling between introverts and extroverts and their language patterns and how that changed. That was quite fascinating too.
Yes. So let's get into that for a moment. So some people, when they come into a therapy space, are all tears and very emotional, right? And others are more contained and they take a little bit time to express what they're really feeling. So that was really quite interesting in the study, that the people who are more openly expressive they tend to have a bigger reaction the first time they do it. But the group that are less expressive tends to be on the second time of sitting down and writing. But what was fascinating to me was the bit about the expressive language. So the study also showed over and over again that the people who had more positive vocabulary tended to be more optimistic. I thought that was really interesting. And so, as you were saying before, you get to the end of the 4 times of doing it, you can actually see the positive vocabulary increasing and the negative vocabulary decreasing.
Yeah, I've done that before with people getting them to journal about the same situation, a bit different, like just dumping of the negative thoughts of what's coming in on, challenges through the day, and to do that day after day after day. And you do end up seeing generally a pattern that negativity starts to shift and become lessened, but less. So I guess it's sort of on the similar basis as that, but in a broader context.
I just thought it was a fascinating study. Again, not a lot of people knew about it. Even Andrew hadn't heard about it until he actually did the research for his podcast, which was really good. But a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists have been using this technique with amazing favorable results. And again, it's not about the psychologist or psychiatrist or counselor or anyone having a look at what the notes are. It's really about a personal experience and engaging in that person's opportunity to stimulate the prefrontal cortex to help to process trauma, which is really great, because quite often we can distort things and we can sort of be a bit stale in the way that we might see something, but potentially revisiting that over and over again and looking at the connections must help the brain to begin to process, sort it, and let it go, which is quite interesting, isn't it?
It is. And I think if we think that we're going to be writing a piece of work that somebody else is going to read, whether that be a counsellor or trusted friend, we would still potentially write it in a different way to what it would be if we knew that only our eyes were going to see that. But the focus really was on is just writing, not focusing on who's going to be writing it, whether it makes sense. It was just getting that emotion out and those words out onto the paper.
On that note, that just jogged my memory. They also talked about people who lie. So quite often, people will come into therapy and they won't tell you the whole truth. And so as long as they're not telling you the full truth, they're not necessarily going to process it fully. So in the journal, what tends to occur is people start to tell the truth about it. And that stimulates something really important. So when people fess up, when they turn up and they're really truthful about something, that healing starts to occur. Isn't that interesting, eh?
Yeah, the letting go. I guess it's the acknowledgement, isn't it? It's acknowledging that event actually happened, which is a huge part of that healing process. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times when people do go through trauma, they dissociate. They distance themselves and they do their best not to go there, or they might ruminate. So they go in this very tight, fixated sort of circuit of their truth from their lens for that period of time, but they might not question that ever. So I think once we start to unwrap it, maybe people start to then look in hindsight, what was that really like? And get a little bit honest. Yeah.
So, I think writing it down as well, like we're saying these 4 times, and saying how you believe it's affected you over that period of time and what events that is caused from that initial trauma to happen. So sort of say that it was something to do with trust. So then moving forward, you might not trust anybody. And, that affects your relationships and then has a bigger impact on it. So you start sort of seeing, that comes back from because this happened. I now got a distrust in that. So you look through a different lens completely on your life.
Absolutely. I think understanding that we can do a bit of a review of our life through that wisdom lens, just being a bit clearer about how, we have got to where we've got to, and the sort of sequence of events that have led up to that can definitely be useful. I think it can help a person to maybe even validate their position, make peace with it on some level. But it's hard to know fully, how incredible we are. And what I get excited about is when people do these studies and it shows real clinical clarity that this stuff works. That's cool for me, because there's a part of us that knows how to reset things.
Yes, for sure. And I think, like, looking back over our past and having that healing journey, not putting blame, having no judgment as we're actually doing the journaling. It was trying to remove that emotion of blame out of it. Really does have a huge healing. Yeah, I would say probably healing to us. It can feel hard at the time, especially if it's a really traumatic thing, to remove that emotion, but in some ways that can be how we learn to grow as well, because we've gone through a certain event. At the time, again, it can be hard to see that, and even later it can be hard to see that you had to go through something. But I am a true believer of things that happen to us in our life are part of things that help us grow, and as long as we can let go of that healing, that trauma, and heal as well.
Well, I, like you, am a strong believer that everything has a perfection to it, that there's layers of wisdom within all of our experiences, and it's not negative or positive, it's just how life is, and we're here to grow and to experience all that life brings, no matter what package it comes in. So I think doing these journal exercises, specifically that one, can be very, very healing. Clearly, clinical evidence is saying it is. We're not just making this up. I could put a link down to the Huberman podcast, along with the name of, what's his name again?
Dr. James Pennebaker.
Yes, I'll put a link, and so if people are interested in finding out more about him or the studies, you can have a look further into it. But, these are exciting times where people like Andrew Huberman, I really hat off to him, because he likes to just share stuff that's often hidden and put it out there into the world, so people can start to use these incredible breakthroughs, instead of it being stuck in a journal or a study somewhere that no one outside of that study ever gets to see, which is a bit of a pity, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and showcase the people that are actually the founders of these tools, because so many people have heard of journaling, but, unfortunately, nobody, or not me and yourself, and I would imagine there's many other people, and Andrew is one of them as well, had never heard that James Pennebaker was actually one of the founders of this style of writing for healing.
Absolutely. So look, when we're looking at the idea of giving things a go, I also heard within, I guess, understanding a bit of reluctance to just go straight into this. Andrew Huberman, he was going to give it a go, and he said he was going to pick one of the least sort of dramatic things first, just to see how it went. And that is something to be thoughtful about. Like, if you're particularly vulnerable and you don't have anyone that you're currently seeing to talk things through, maybe think about putting that in place before you do such an exercise. So if something really does come up that you need to share that with someone, to bring perspective to it, if that needs to be that, maybe be mindful of that kind of support. However, this is also a therapy in itself, which is a private journey, and it's better than sitting with trauma for years and years and years too. So if you feel strong enough or willing enough to run the experiment, of course, it may be something to think about or consider quite seriously. I'm excited. I want to invite some of my clients to give this a go and see what happens. I think it's a nice extra to the toolbox that we can offer our clients that come in for all sorts of reasons. And I think too, in my own life, it would be interesting to see how effective that is as well.
Yes, for sure. And I'd invite people that actually, are listening to this to comment to us if they actually are willing to try it, or if they have tried it. What happened? How did they feel afterwards? And will they continue to do the 4? And have they looked at the changing language from the negative to positive, etc.? Because I'd be interested to know, how it goes for people.
Yeah. If you've got any questions, or maybe you out there have tried it already, comment below. We'd love to hear from you and see how that is for you out there. And if you decided from this podcast that you'll give it a go, let us know how it went, if you're open to that. So anyway, Teresa, that comes to an end of today's talk time. Thank you very much for coming back and having a chat with me. It's always nice to have a guest.
Thank you, Meredith. It was a pleasure to come along, and hopefully be back again sometime else. Yeah.
Now, if anyone out there would like to know more about training to become a clinical hypnotherapist, you can visit the website nzach.ac.nz and find out more about that. Teresa actually helps me a lot with the school, don't you, Teresa?
I do at times.
So, yeah. So, when we're thinking about journeying someone into being a professional clinical hypnotherapist, it is an amazing career and it's very fulfilling in so many deep ways. I couldn't think of anything else I'd rather be doing on this planet. So it's a privilege to be able to pass it on to people. So if you are keen, get in touch. And if you like this sort of thing, remember to like and subscribe to the channel so you can get updated. There are some very strange times at the moment where a lot of people I know have subscribed, but they're not being notified of the podcasts, which is really interesting. And I think a lot of small channels and even medium to big channels have been feeling the weird weather about sometimes people not knowing that there's another podcast that's been released. So if you do like it, it definitely helps the algorithm. And if you have subscribed, maybe to put on your notification if you are keen on following every week. So I'll be back here next week again. So for now, ka kite. Bye.
Bye.